What's up guys, it's Manga Time once again. I'm here to bring you my review of Bleach 663, God of Thunder 4, or as I like to call it, the most predictable chapter this year so far. It was incredibly predictable, basically exactly what I thought was going to happen. The entire chapter, Yoruichi kicks Askin's ass, and at the end he goes Vollständig, and turns the tables. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it's bad because of that, but it was very predictable. I was reading it, and I was on like page 15, and Askin had just been knocked to the ground, and I was thinking to myself, if there is anyone at this point in Bleach's history who thinks that Askin is dead, you're kidding yourself. Like, even Urahara shouldn't think Askin's dead, because he's genre savvy enough to have been a part of this world now for the last 14, 15 years, and he hasn't quite worked out yet that bad guys don't die. If you kill a bad guy and it's not on the final page, he's obviously not dead. So I'm complaining, because Askin's like one of my favourite characters, so it's great to see him get back up. Anyway, the chapter starts off with Yoruichi revealing her new form, which is supposedly called Shunko Raiju Senkei Shunryu Kokubyo Senki, which apparently means Flash God Black Cat Warrior Princess, which is a cool name. It is a cool name. But Urahara is the one who told Askin this, and Askin kind of turns around. He looks quite funny, and he's like, "Don't you tell me the name? Why are you answering for her?" And Urahara, it's a bit weird. Urahara just kind of smiles to himself. I have to admit that Urahara, I kind of gave them a pass for it last week, but their relationship definitely goes a bit strange this week. And Askin's like, he catches on. He says like, "Don't tell me that she doesn't comprehend our language right now." To which point Yoruichi just kind of goes mental, and leaps into the air. And I have to admit, she does look cool. She looks like a Thundercat. And Askin kind of like tries to defend himself, but Yoruichi smacks him in the face. Basically, he goes flying with this kind of electricity claw attack, which does look pretty cool, actually, to be fair. There is a lot of lightning in this chapter, and it does look very cool. Askin, he basically is slashed on the shoulder, and he has this great face. He's like, "Oh, hell no," and there's like blood going everywhere. Seriously, Askin's so great, and Kubo definitely likes the character. You can tell. He draws great faces on him and stuff. And he just looks really funny. He looks really good. But I love the way that he doesn't flip. And a lot of this chapter is going to be me and my admiration for the character, because I do like him, and I think a lot of you like him as well. Because he's a stern ritter that hasn't lost his marbles, and I hope that never changes, because so many of the stern ritters are like right now, Lil Barrow would probably be like, "I'm the messenger of God, I'm immortal, I'm divine, you can't kill me with these pitiful attacks." Whereas Ashin's like, "Oh crap," and he like tries to fly away and stuff, and he's just a far more humble character, and he's more interesting to watch because of it. But anyway, yeah, Yoruichi basically slashes him and throws him down into the ground below, and I was thinking to myself, reading this, like, I'm not fussed about Askin taking all this damage, because he's just not going to be dead. He then bursts out of the ground. He's like clutching his shoulder, and there's blood everywhere. And he's like, "This isn't happening. I'm supposed to have acquired immunity to her Reiatsu. It's impossible that the Reiatsu of the same Shinigami can change mid-fight. There has to be some reasonable explanation." We get an explanation. Whether or not it's reasonable or not, I'm going to leave up to you guys. Because I'm going to vent a little bit late once we've had Urahara's explanation. He's like, "Oh, it's all in the mood, apparently." He then says, "Isn't it always said that cats are fickle? With the Kokyobyo Senkei form of Yoruichi, this attribute manifests in her Reiatsu." And then we see that Yoruichi's not even bothering to come after Askin at the moment, because she can't be bothered. She's not in the mood. We have seen moods affecting Reiatsu before, like Katen Kyokotsu, for example, has to be in the right mood to want to do something. But we've never seen it to this extent. And, apparently Yoruichi is a pretty moody person to begin with, but in that form she's even more so, and her Reiatsu is directly responsive to those changes, and thus becomes really unstable. What I kind of want to know is, Urahara then jumps out of the way as Yoruichi appears in front of Askin again, and Urahara's like, it's like her Reiatsu changes into that of a completely different person. What I want to know is, if Yoruichi has essentially been reduced to a feral cat, which it does seem like she has been, why isn't she going after Urahara? Is there a reason because we see later on that she does have a fondness for Urahara in this cat form. So is that something Urahara's programmed into this form of hers, or like, where's this form come from? That's the crux of the issue, and it's the same issue that plagued us with Nemu's super power up, and it's the same issue that plagued us with Nanau's heavenly god sword. Where has this power come from? Seriously, it comes out of nowhere, and it's the perfect counter to Askin's immunity ability, and it's very annoying. Like, I don't see how Kubo can think that this is good writing anymore. Like, I do give Kubo a lot of passes, but for every fight against the Elite to have a Deus Ex Machina pulled out of a character's arse is ridiculous. You know, what happened to just defeating a character with skill and power? Instead, Yoruichi happens to have the one form in Bleach that can change its Reiatsu 48 times a second or something like that, he says in a minute. So Askin gets sent flying again, and Urahara's like, oh, there's an influenza season every year, right? And he says, even though it's not a totally new strain, the smallest change can change everything. And he says, that the same flu will spread even if it is just a tiny change. And he says, this works in the same way. Even if your body works diligently to build an immunity, the smallest change can make all previous foundations disappear with a poof. And he says, of course, in your case, your immunity acquisition speed is incredibly fast, so Askin can basically get an immunity to an attack in about a minute. And he then says, upon receiving an enemy attack, you reflexively analyze their Reiatsu and begin to forge your immunity at terrifying speed. As long as you have a minute, you can probably render any attack ineffective, but Yoruichi, it won't work with her in this situation, because the Reiatsu of her form changes 48 times a second, which is just like... At this point, I kind of feel like you read this sort of thing, and you're like, okay, fine. Like, you just kind of go with it, because the Shinigami, they have to win, that's fine. I'm not, no one's annoyed by that. It's just the fact that, why can't they just win through their own powers? Like, where's Yoruichi's Zanpakuto? Why does she have to have this really random form? The form is cool, don't get me wrong, it is cool. Although I really don't like how it just completely takes away her personality and dejects her into this kind of animal form. It's a bit... Because one of the coolest things about Yoruichi is the fact that she's got a really sassy personality, and she stands up for herself, but now she's, like, completely submissive to Urahara, which is a tad weird. But anyway, Askin pulls another great face as he basically gets mashed into the ground with this enormous burst of lightning, and he goes flying off somewhere. And it's at that point when you're like, okay, he's clearly coming back, because if you've read Bleach, it doesn't take a genius to work out that the bad guy is never killed on not the last page. So Yoruichi kind of lands against a rooftop, and then she kind of... Urahara's like, it's playtime, come here, and she like jumps on him and starts licking his face. Is a little bit weird, I won't lie, a bit weird. Especially if he's programmed this into her. We have no idea. He says, she's like lying asleep on his leg, and he's like, oh my, the fact that I'm the only one who can rein you in. I think that's an interesting line. Does that imply that he didn't create her power, or does it imply that he did? And then he says, and the fact that you only recall when you're in the mood for it is definitely a bit of a flaw. That then tells me that maybe Urahara did create this, but I don't know. And then he says, but Yoruichi-san is pretty adorable, and she's in this form, so I don't really mind. Then we realise that the 5 minutes are almost up. So this is when the chapter gets interesting again. So the 5 minutes are almost up, and that means that Yoruichi... I presume that means she's going to lose this form? I don't quite... He says the effects of the immunisation draft are about to wear off. So I guess that means she's going to be poisoned again. Because Askin's gift ball poison is still inside her, all that's happened is Urahara's made her immune to it for 5 minutes so that she could beat him up. And he says, thank you for putting forth such due diligence, Yoruichi-san. We'll drain all the poison out of you, very soon. I'm just going to go and make sure that Askin's dead. So at least Urahara is taking the initiative here in making sure an enemy is dead for once. It's just a shame for him that the enemy is already getting back up. And I have to say that I really like the pages where Askin returns. It's very cool. Urahara kind of takes a step forward, and there's a massive ball of light that appears in front of him, with like some really sinister kind of black Reiatsu coming off the top of it. And we then discover Askin has created a massive ball of poison, which is enormous, and it covers like a big section of the bridge they're on. And it's called Gift Ball Deluxe, and apparently it's the largest poison ball I'm capable of making, and Urahara is already on his knees, which implies that he is already being affected by the gift ball. Now obviously it's Urahara, so something's going to happen when he's going to get out of it next week, but Askin kind of walks forward and he's like, oh, that's not what you meant now, though, is it? You're more interested in this new form of mine. And I'm not going to lie, I was on this page like, oh my god, please don't let him be some stupid chicken thing or something like that. And I was like, I'm going to turn the page. Oh. Okay. So we get to see Askin's Vollständig on the final page. Its name is Hassein. I presume that's how it's pronounced. I don't think it's going to be Hassein. It might be. It might. I don't know, but Hassein maybe sounds a bit more right to me. And he says it's a pretty morbid name, don't you think? And apparently it's something like Dutch for god of death or something like that, or Manga Stream have got it along the lines of poison taster or something. But it has got a pretty dark sounding name, cool sounding name. The design itself is interesting. Now, it's nowhere near as bad as like Lil's weird forms or anything like that. It actually does look kind of cool. I can't help but think it might have looked a bit cool if he still had his shirt on, but it does look quite cool. I love the way his wings are molecules. That's really cool. His Heilig Fire looks alright. The thing that weirds me out about this form is just there's lots of circles everywhere. Like, there are random circles on his arms and going down his bracelets are cool. And I also think it's a bit weird he's got the molecules around his chest, around his stomach as well, and the dots there. It does kind of seem that Kubo got Askin, and he was like, I'm just going to put loads of circles on this guy, and that's his Vollständig. Now, on the plus side, it's cool that his Vollständig is an actual transformation, because his legs are like all fucking wavy and shit now as well, and he has like goggles on, which looks kind of cool. I'm not going to lie, the goggles are quite cool. And all of his wounds have been completely healed. So, there's a couple of things I want to pull from this. The fact that he's still alive, does that mean he's been able to work out a immunity to Yoruichi's Reiatsu, or is it more the fact that Yoruichi's about to die anyway because the poison's coming back? Not only is the poison coming back, but Gift Ball Deluxe is now absolutely kind of annihilating this area. One would imagine that Urahara is probably going to be fine, because he's either going to be fine or someone's going to come in and bail him out, but I don't think it's going to happen because that would just be a bit weird, because Urahara's already bailed Yoruichi out. So yeah, I think Askin's form looks cool. I think the chapter was decent. There are things I don't like. I don't really like that Yoruichi's had her character stripped away from her. That's a bit weird. And I hope she goes back to being normal pretty soon, and then, you know, maybe we get a Shikai out of her, but that's looking less and less likely at this rate. Urahara's cool. I hope this means now that Urahara will fight Askin seriously, because they're kind of just messing around with him in this chapter, and Askin's like, you know, I'm not fucking around here. So I hope that Urahara takes him a bit more seriously. Obviously everyone wants to see Urahara's Bankai. I think there's a real possibility of that in this fight, because like I said before, we're not going to move away from this fight now. This fight will probably last until about 670, especially if Hassein has a second form. I think people are rejoicing, obviously, that Askin's form is not that weird, which is, yeah, it's great, that's cool. At least he looks humanoid still. And he does actually look quite cool. He looks kind of sciencey, sci-fi, kind of like a 70s kind of thing going on almost. But I think he looks cool. I'm looking forward to seeing it in action next week. Looking forward to seeing what Urahara has up his sleeve. Yoruichi might be out of the game because she's about to be infected again, and then Gift Ball Deluxe is going to affect her again. So if the poisoning stacks, she's in trouble, and so is Yushiro. Yushiro is in big trouble if the poisoning stacks, because he's about to die. He's literally about to die. But yeah, I mean, very, very predictable chapter, but predictable in how I wanted it to go. I wanted this to basically happen. Again, I'm real fucking sick of Kubo pulling these forms out of nowhere and being like, oh, yeah. I think what this hopefully will lead to is a flashback for Urahara and Yoruichi, because Urahara's talking about how he's the only one who can rein her in and that sort of thing. That might stem back to their childhood or something like that, I don't know. But yeah, that would be very cool to get a flashback of those two. But yeah, next week I'm predicting it will just be a reversal of fate, because that's kind of how these things go. Askin is now going to go on a complete offensive, probably really mess up Urahara and or Yoruichi, more likely to be Yoruichi. Yeah, that's what I think is going to happen. I think he's basically going to go on the offensive, and then next week will end with Urahara probably doing something that might change the tables for him again. That's what I think will happen. It was a good chapter this week. I was a bit harsh on last week. I think maybe last week deserves a 4, actually, because last week was quite good. This week I'm more inclined to give a 3.5 and I think it's actually fairer as well. I really liked Askin going Vollständig, obviously, because that was really cool. Yoruichi's attacks are very cool, but I'm not a big fan of her losing her personality, and I'm not a big fan of the random transformation having the perfect counter for Askin's immunity ability. So I'll drop a 3.5 on this week's chapter, guys. I think it's fair. Let me know in the comments below, though, if you disagree with my score and if you thought this chapter was better or worse than what I've given it. What do you think of Yoruichi's power and her ability, and do you like the fact that she's no longer the same person? What do you think of Askin's Vollständig Hassein? But yeah, let me know in the comments below, guys, and subscribe to my videos. I would super appreciate your support. But until next time, guys, see you later.